You're listening to Writer Unblocked, a podcast for aspiring and experienced authors. I'm your host and author coach, Nicole, and on this show, we chat with up-and-coming as well as best-selling authors, literary agents, and publishing professionals to inspire you and keep the vibe high. Today on Writer Unblocked, I'm chatting with Christina Diane, a wife and mother who enjoys weaving stories of love and passion from her home in Northern Maine. Her favorite genre to read and write are historical romances set in the Regency era. She's also a reader of most other genres, but especially psychological thrillers and dark romance. She took a long break from writing when her kids were younger, but she found that she could not stop thinking about these stories and these characters that she just had to get on paper. Christina Diane loves chatting with her readers and talking about great reads, so please contact her on her socials. She is more than happy to engage. You can find her on Instagram at Christina Diane Author. Same for TikTok, Christina Diane Author. You can also check out her website, ChristinaDianeBooks.com. Okay, let's dive in. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. We have Christina Diane today on the podcast. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me. Excited to chat with you.
I am thrilled. And I would like to start off by having you just give a very quick intro. Tell us about you.
So I'm Christina Diane. I write spicy, steamy Regency era romance. I'm very much into the Regency era. Maybe I'll branch out of that at some point, but that's where I do a lot of my reading as well. I got into Regency actually from the Bridgerton series. So before I read a little more contemporary, I didn't read a ton of historical romance. And when the Bridgerton series came out, loved that and was like, hey, I'm going to go read those books. And then I read those books and then I just never looked back from ooh, this is my genre. I'm here. I've arrived.
That's so funny because I wonder how many authors were born out of the resurgence of Bridgerton. It was so good. It was so good. And I thought they did a great job with the show. Sometimes when they adapt great books, they don't do such a good job. But okay, so tell me what drew you, since you were reading other subgenres before, what drew you to Regency era romance?
I think I just really like the confounds of the society. I find it fascinating in how people moved through just a different world than our own. And I think that's part of what I enjoy about it. I think I like reading something that's similar and still looks sort of like how we look today, but is also a completely different society with a different set of norms and that would drive people's behaviors differently than what drives our behaviors today.
Yes, there's a lot of norms and a lot of rules to follow. And every time I read a new Regency romance, I find some sort of new rule that I didn't know existed. So it's very interesting, how much they have to adhere to.
So many rules. And then it's fun to see which ones you play with when you write and which ones you stay true to, because there's, depending on which Regency author you read, you play with the rules a little bit differently.
Right. So I'm excited to talk about the fact that you've written a whole series, and talk to me a little bit about the timeline of writing an entire series, querying, and then deciding to self-publish, and what happened next.
So I wrote my first novel back in, it's December, January-ish of this year. And I just decided I would send it to my target publisher. So I was like, I'm just going to see what happens. It's the publisher that, is known for historical romance. Hey, I'll just see what happens. I got a little impatient, as I do, and was like, I'm just going to indie pub. I started making a lot of book talk and bookstagram connections and met a lot of amazing indie authors. And I'm like, hey, I can do this. I'm driven. I can figure all this out. And so I started figuring it out, and I got an editor, and I got a cover artist, and I got a personal assistant, and I got all the things that, I need to get myself organized. And then here they come around months later and are like, hey, actually, tell us more about your whole series. And, first they asked for the whole manuscript because of the query You only send some of the manuscript. They came back. They're like, hey, can we get the whole thing and a synopsis of your series? And then they came back and were like, hey, we want to actually publish your entire series, which is 6 books. So I was like,
That is incredible.
wow, that was so unexpected because I had the launch for the first book planned. So it was like a couple weeks before I was going to launch the first book. They came and were like, hey, actually, we want to publish your entire series. So I had to pull my launch and kind of readjust my entire plan. And so I immediately started writing another series.
So, how many, less than a year between
Yes.
you drumming up all this interest, querying, and then deciding to self publish, and then they actually got back to you, like less than a year?
Oh, yes. Yep. That was all. I think I queried them back in like February of this year.
That is incredible. You must have opened that email and thought, what did you think?
I could not believe it. Like, there was, like, this wave of, like, emotion, like, I did, like, the, you kinda, like, cry in your hands for a minute thing, and then it was like, "Wait, let me reread that. Maybe I just read that wrong because 'cause I'm not quite sure, like, what's happening right now." And then I ran down and I told my husband first because I felt like he should know first, like, that, what had happened, and then I, like, processed for a little bit and then ended up talking to my best friend for a while. It's just I actually still, I don't think, fully believe that this happened, especially just because I haven't been writing fiction my whole life or, for a super long time. I'm a newer author or writer, I guess, since I haven't technically published yet. It just still feels a little surreal, but just such a cool experience, like very humbling and exciting and like all the waves of emotions.
I am so excited. Obviously, we've been talking for a while and I follow you on social media, and you've built a community very, very quickly,
Mm.
actually. So I was wondering how how did you go about building a large following and connecting genuinely with so many
Mhm.
people? And do you think that contributed at all in the decision from the publisher?
I've wondered that if they looked at my socials and they're like, "Hey, she's already got a following going." Because when I decided, I'm one of those people, I just go all in. So when I sat down and these characters were talking to me and I decided that I was going to write this first novel and see what happened, I'm a go all in kind of person. Like, I'm just a quick decisions, let's just do the thing and go all in. And I immediately created my social accounts and started building a following while I was writing book 1. So I did not wait. I went ahead and just did it because I'm like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I decide I don't want to do this and I close the socials. Like, it's not the end of the world. And so I just engaged in the community. So that was my secret, is I just brought myself to it. I wasn't trying to sell a book. I wasn't trying to sell anything. I just was another bookstagrammer and another book talker who also was, I didn't hide that I was, writing. My handles are all, Christina Diane author. They have been from the beginning. But I just joined the community and I shared what I was reading and I engaged in other people's content and I joined a couple different book groups of like people just talking about their reads and talking about things that they enjoy. And I started, then you get on like some of the follow train loops and like through there, I met all kinds of friends. I actually met one of my now like legit besties from just doing like one of the like smutty follow trains.
Smutty follow train. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, trademark smutty follow
that
train.
is what
I
it's
love
called.
that.
It's called Smutty Follow Train. And like she now does peer reading for me and we pass our work back and forth and just it's amazing how you meet people when you're just open to engaging and it takes a little work. You got to obviously, it's not one of those things you can just like set up and then schedule a bunch of posts and then walk away and think that you're going to build a following or that you're going to build like those connections and friendships. Like I had to make prioritize to invest time to actually, comment and engage and participate in these chats and, see who kind of I vibe with. And before when I was going to publish the book on my own, for my very first novel, I hit almost 100 ARC signups with my ARC
Wow.
sign up list. And I fully attribute that to my like Bookstagram and Book Talk following and people that have just like, because we've become friends and, talking and working through the community together, that people are like interested in my story. And so, and these, it translated that way. I don't know yet how it's going to translate from a sales perspective, but it definitely translated from an interest and a people that are actually following along and want to be part of the story.
Yeah, and there was something you said while we were having a conversation earlier about your goal and how you assess the traditional publishing offer.
Mhm.
You sat down and you said to yourself, "Okay, but what is my goal?" So
Yep.
talk to me about that because I'm also very goal oriented, and I'd love to hear a little bit about how you made that decision and how the goal kind of keeps you doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and hopefully it's the right decision, but my goal is I really want to do this full time. Like I want this to be my career. I have a corporate job that I have my 9 to 5, sometimes longer depending on the weeks. And I want this to be my full-time job. I want to write and I want to engage with the book community and I want to do all of the amazing things there. And so when that offer came through, I had to weigh out what helps get me closer to that goal. And being a brand new, no name other than my like Bookstun and Book Talk following author, what gets me closer to that goal? And I ultimately just, when weighing it out, it's like the reach that I would get from the publisher. Plus, there is a little bit of credibility that comes from that too when you're traditionally published. Some readers care about that, some don't. My thought was a hybrid approach is probably going to work best for me because some of my stories, I'm writing a series that's more of a novella, quick burn, spicy kind of series that I'm like, a publisher may not be as interested in that because it's not as long of a book. It's, they're quicker stories. That's probably better for indie pub, and I can get those out a little faster. And then like maybe the strategy is that my longer novels are like more robust series or things that the publisher would be interested in and I can capitalize on their marketing. And then when they're marketing those books, they're also marketing me in general. So then that's marketing my backlist of my other stories. And so that was where I kind of landed on that decision of I think hybrid is probably the way to go depending on like which story I'm telling and what type of publishing makes sense.
This is the perfect setup for that because now you have the autonomy and freedom to self-publish, but also you have a traditional route. And like you said, that has the exposure
Mm-hmm.
that will spill over to your other stories. Okay, so they bought
All
all six
6,
books.
yes. I'd only written 3 already, and so I have 3 more to write for them, so I've got those dates scattered out through the rest of the year and into next year, which is exciting, but I have the outlines and storylines for all the books, so been able to hand off half the series to them, and I think the first
Wow.
one will come out next fall. It's gonna be a little bit, I
Wow.
know.
So it's a different publishing schedule than an indie publishing
Oh,
schedule.
yes, because I was gonna publish like, the book would already be out if I would have published it, but it's now gonna be next year. Well, like I said, weigh it out. I think that's gonna end up being hopefully, the right decision and a good thing to do, and I'm really excited about it. It was very like I said, lots of emotions. It was very exciting for me and my family.
I was talking to an editor. She was an editor at Penguin and she was an editor at Amazon. And we were talking about, I believe this is episode 2 of the podcast. She was talking about how nowadays when they're acquiring, they don't have as much time to edit and develop things. So they mostly acquire things that are in really good shape.
Mm,
And you were talking earlier about how when you were going to self-publish, you hired an editor, you invested in
mhm,
a cover art designer. So the what you were presenting in the querying process was a pretty polished
mhm.
package,
Yep.
basically.
Yes.
Talk to me about the decision that you made. Obviously, there's an economic cost to these things, especially when you're going to do it on your own, or even if you're not going to do it on your own. Like I said, when you are going to query, you have to invest something into
Mhm.
polishing
Yep.
up your story. How did you decide I'm going to hire an editor, or I'm not going? I'm not going to do the cover art myself, or how did you make those decisions in the beginning?
One thing that is interesting is because I queried them right after I finished the manuscript, what drew them in was actually my completely unedited one, which was like crazy. But then when I sent them the full manuscript, I was able to send them a more edited manuscript because by that point I had an editor. But when I started this journey, it was, you don't know what to expect and you learn a lot more from the community. And so at first I was like, I'm going to do everything myself. I'll be able to do everything. I'll be able to figure it all out. And I started with, I don't need an editor. I'm just going to get Pro Writing Aid and I'll use the tools and I'll go through that's how I started. I mean, it did not take long at all for me to go, no, girl, that is not at all what we're going to do here. And like accepting that this is a business like anything else. And you do have to invest in yourself and invest in your business to turn out the product that you want to turn out. And so I was like, oh, that was the very first decision I made was like, oh, we need an editor. Like we definitely need an editor because I started going through um like myself, in Pro Writing Aid doing my self-editing process and I was like, whew, I really think that's what we're going to need. I did beta readers or I guess they're more like alpha readers first where I did like say, hey, get some other eyes on this and read the story and get some feedback. And I was like, editor. That's first and foremost. Then the more I got into the community and I started like really appreciating supporting the other artists in the community, I'm like, that was the decision of like, I am not going to try to do this cover myself. I'm going to support other artists in the community because I believe if you're part of the community, you should also be. The community supports each other, so it's like let's support all of the talent. And so that's where I was like, I'm going to get a cover artist, and the cover's so important. It's crazy. I'm not a cover person. So it's really funny because everybody's like, they talk about the covers. I'm like, I'm just like a Kindle girly. And if the blurb looks good, I'm reading the book. Like, I don't obsess about the cover that much. But people do, and they love them. And the cover's just such a big deal. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to support some other folks in the community and get some pretty covers.
The cover, but also lately I've seen a lot of posts on social about the spine.
Mm,
If you don't have consistency in that spine in a series, people lose their minds. So
yes. I've seen that too. And because people want their books are like their display pieces and they want them all like perfect and lined up. And
oh yeah, on Bookstagram, I've seen some really impressive home
oh,
libraries
those
and color.
bookshelves are amazing. I don't have any, but they're amazing.
I'm a Kindle girl too. I agree with you. I'm just I had started down that minimalist road. Although there are some books that I do like to have the physical copy. And obviously I've had the privilege of reading book one of that series that is now being traditionally published. And I remember I said to you, when it's out, I need my
You
signed
will get
paperback.
one. I will make sure you get a signed paperback.
I am so thrilled. And so I want to talk about, because I've also had the privilege of reading book one in the novella series. So talk to me about this novella series in general, but also how will the self-publishing schedule work?
Yeah.
And what is this novella series about?
So I'm really excited about this one. I mean, you've read like my first work and then this one. This series is spicier than I made the first series, the one that the publisher picked up. Don't get me wrong, friends. That series is spicy as well with multiple intense steamy scenes, but this one being novella length, I feel like it's probably just as many scenes, but in a shorter like duration. So the premise behind this one is that I've got 5 different couples. They're all at the exact same house party. So it's called the Unlikely Betrothal series because you would not have expected any of these people to end up together for different reasons. And they are making use of this house party as their kind of their quest to find love and to meet each other. And of course, each one has a different nuanced kind of reason of why this is, compelling. And the plan for this one is I want to start launching the first one, I think in November of this year. I wanted to do October, but I think November's probably a little more realistic. And I intend to launch each book one per month because I've almost finished writing the entire series. So I'm going
How many novellas in the series?
5.
Okay, so you would publish these before the
They will come out before the main series. Yep.
So people will get a taste. And people, let me tell you, without going into too much detail, I read book 1 the first novella, and you're right, because it's short. You dive right in. There is not a lot of exposition, but it is fabulous. And I can see how this might be my favorite couple, but I don't know because I want to read the rest. But it's just so well done, and your characters are so, so great. And I know we've talked about this before, but I need you to tell me again how the heck you keep track, because you have built such a rich, expansive world. How do you keep track of so many characters?
I have a Miro board, just the online tool Miro, and I have like the little digital sticky notes, and I have their character notes, and I have little lines drawn for who kind of is related to who and friends with who. And typically what I have to do when I'm writing is I have to like kind of reread that and recenter myself back in that character, because I'm kind of a sassy, sarcastic girl, and you see that I think in a lot of my females, of they kind of take on some of that like sassy kind of vibe. But
Eliza is my favorite.
she's so hurt that hers is coming from like a place of like hurt, and I won't spoil the fun too much there, but I've tried to like make a moment where you can see like in her journey where she softens and she's like back to that, like she's still that same person, but like back to like the moment she's kind of healed, I guess, or closer to healing.
I cannot believe you took me through such a roller coaster in such a short book. I mean, I was all over the place when I read that in one shot, and I was in all the places. So, okay, so you have a Miro board. That makes sense, because with keeping track of such a rich world and so many people and personalities, you have to have a visual of some sort, whether it's actual sticky notes or a Miro board to keep track of everybody. And so this allows you to obviously spin off and write about so many different characters. Are there any characters that you're like, this character's over here, but then once you got writing about them, you're like, oh, that is surprising. I really like this character.
Well, I think you already know one of mine, which is Matt in the Romancing the Tawn series, which is my first series that the publisher is publishing. I didn't intend to like totally fall in love with him the way that I did. He was intended to be more of, he's a supporting character in book 1. And the more that he went on, I was like, oh, I just adore him. Another scenario, I originally intended the House Party series to only be 4 books. I actually created a 5th because I was like, oh, there's just a story I got to tell here because of how I unfold a couple things. And I was like, nope, I got to tell the story. I'm going to do it. So it actually is a romance.
I love that.
And so I was like, I got to give them a story. They just got to have it. I can't just let that be like a side, like question mark. It's like, nope, we got to like actually make that a real story. So not only did I give them a story, I actually made them book 3 because I felt like their story was important enough that it needs to be told sooner and not at like the end. So I reordered what was going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 is now 1, 2, 5, 4, 3. So the book that was going to be 3rd actually moved to the last because I think that's the compelling order to tell the stories. They are going to be standalones. You could read each one by themselves and totally understand and not need it. But if you wanted to progress in the world, like that's the better order I felt like to tell it in. So I was very excited about that.
I absolutely love this, and I love that it's coming out sooner rather than later, so I can dig in because, like I said, I read the first one this week, and I'm obsessed. Okay, so we talk about keeping track of your characters and a little bit of your process. What would you say is a struggle in the writing process for you, if at all?
My biggest struggle, so I think you hopefully would agree with me, my strength is banter. Like, I love the dialogue. That's my favorite thing to write. I love the banter between the characters, and I always have so much fun with that. I struggle with the level of description because I feel like my books are pretty fast paced, and some would probably find them too fast paced because some people really want to immerse in that world and that setting a little more. And I think that's the balance that I struggle with. And the more that I write, I think I'm getting better at it, but it's like I write a little bit how I like to read. And because I'm a fast pace, I like reading. I like getting to the action. Like, what's the action? What's the dialogue? Like, move me through the emotions of these characters. I don't need as much of the grounding me in the setting or like what's the color of the dress or like any of that kind of stuff. Like, I don't feel like I need that as much as a reader. So I write the way that I like reading. And so I'm trying to tailor that a little more. I don't know that I'll ever be the person that will. This is why I'll probably never write romantasy because it's too much world building that I don't think I have the skill or the patience to do.
That is a lot of world building. That is true. But speaking of setting, how, because this is what would make me nervous about writing Regency, how do you research historical settings? Because this stuff is a little more complicated back in the day.
Oh my goodness. So I try to be as historically accurate as I can. Like I said, we're playing with some rules. I'm sure I make mistakes. Readers, feel free to tell me where I do and I will try to fix it. I mean, I Google a lot, obviously. I also read a ton of Regency romance to see kind of what other authors are doing and some of the norms and the things that carry true from series to series to series.
A good author is a good reader.
I read almost 200 books a year. I've already read, I think I just checked Goodreads, 142 books this year so far.
Oh my gosh. And I'm over here struggling to hit 70. Okay. Okay.
So I read a lot. I'm a fast reader. The other thing I did is I bought a couple books. I keep them here on my desk. I have the Time Traveler's Guide to Regency Britain, and I have a Regency slang book because I try to,
Regency slang. I need to pick up this book immediately.
because it's so fun. And it's inspired that on Instagram, if you follow me, every Friday I do the Regency word of the week. And so that is one of, like, looking at my analytics, that's one of my most popular like posts, and people love it. It's very simple. It's just like simple Regency terms. I haven't even gotten into any complex stuff yet. I just do it the once a week and people love
I
it.
absolutely adore that. And again, that goes back to community building. You're not just writing a book. You're not just writing a book to get rich. You're like, this is something I deeply care about. This is a community I care about. And this is something I want to do full time because I am fully committed and immersed in it. And I noticed, first of all, looking at your Instagram, I always feel like, oh shoot, I gotta get out. I have so much stuff to do. She's doing so much. She's doing so much. I gotta get all my stuff done. You're a mom and you have a career, like we said, and you're a wife and you're writing a lot, but you're reading a lot.
Yes.
So how do you get so much done? And I caught that you said you hired an assistant. So
Mhm.
so you invested. So talk to me about how like you chose to support yourself
I
here.
did a couple things. One, sorry friends, other than Bridgerton, I do not watch TV. So every time
Sorry,
somebody's
TV.
like, sorry, TV, every time people are like, how do you have time? How do you do all this stuff? I was like, I had to cut TV. So I do not watch it. Honestly, my husband doesn't watch TV anymore. We just, he's usually doing like, his business stuff and I'm doing my stuff. And then we have, our family time and we play board games and stuff as a family instead of watching TV. And like, we'll occasionally watch, a movie or something, but I don't take on any new shows. I don't have any clue about what's going on in these shows other than, like I said, Bridgerton. I will absolutely watch that the second that any episodes drop. But that was one thing I had to do, and it's amazing how much time you get back in your day. I also work from home full time with my corporate career. So that time that I'm not spending commuting is time I get back for family or for errands. it's also very easy during the day to, change out laundry or to like wash dishes real quick or to do things to keep up the house that not everybody has the luxury of doing if they have to go outside of the house to work. And so I'm very, very, very fortunate in that regard. Fortunate my husband's supportive and I can tell him like, I need a writing weekend. So I'm just going to have to write during the day for most of the weekend. And then like at night, we'll go out to dinner or do whatever to kind of get out of the house and get a break from the computer. And he's very supportive. And so I'm lucky in that regard too. And then I did hire an assistant because that was something, even though I don't even have a book published yet. So like this all costs money for me that we've had to, my husband, is obviously supported and we've had to budget and figure out how we do. But that time that it gets back, because she's the one that, creates like the ARC team assets and is coordinating the ARC team. She got my newsletter automation set up. She's getting some of my website stuff done. We're talking about strategies for how we're going to do like this indie pub launch because we may do some different stuff this time. She's researching all of that. And then
She sounds like a godsend.
yeah.
I need somebody. This sounds incredible.
And she's coordinating like the newsletter swaps as we're getting my newsletter going. We're about to do a giveaway because I want to do a big newsletter subscriber push because I have a new reader magnet coming out, which is going to be, if you sign up for my newsletter, you get a free book. It's a novella, which is in the universe of all the other characters in that I write in. Very sweet, cute, and spicy story. And so we're working to get that ready to get live. And then people sign up for my newsletter, they get that book, and I'm going to do a giveaway. I'm trying to decide what all I'm going to give away, but planning on making it pretty substantial. It's not just going to be like a $5 Amazon gift card. I think it's going to be something more substantial so that to draw people in, because I really want to grow my newsletter following and get more traffic to my actual website because I have the socials, but that is not the same as having newsletter subscribers and folks that I can talk to about.
No, I always say your subscribers on your newsletter are really important because you don't own your Instagram.
No,
you don't own your Facebook,
any of that. Like if something happened,
the government could ban TikTok tomorrow, guys. Like, I'm sorry to scare you, but
yes, and it's like I don't have any of that, and so I need to translate that over to subscribers onto my newsletter, and so we're gonna focus on that. I think in the next month or so. And then that'll get us kind of teed up for the new series launch.
That's incredible. I mean, you've set yourself up for success, and clearly, as we know, it has happened. I am so thrilled for you. I am so excited once the announcement is out, obviously, for the series that the publisher is doing, and I'm going to keep my eye on that schedule. But I'm also looking forward to my November. My November novellas. I'm just so thrilled, and I will link everything in the show notes for people to find you. You're very active on social, like you said. You love to chat. People shouldn't be shy about reaching out.
No, message me. I respond to Instagram messages. I talk to authors and readers and just random people. It's if people message me, I'm usually pretty good at responding back.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on, and I know you're going to be back because we have so much more to talk about once these books are starting to come out. There are scenes we need to discuss in the first series, as you know, because we have discussed this before. Thank you so much, and I just thrilled for you, and I am so excited to see what happens next.
Yes, thank you, and I will come back as often as you will have me.
Thanks, Christina. Thank you so much for joining me this week. For more information on today's episode, please check out the show notes. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the podcast to receive new episodes right when they're released. You can subscribe right now in the app you're using to listen. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Reignite with Nicole. Lastly, I do have a quick favor to ask before we go. If you're enjoying the podcast, I hope you'll let me know by leaving a review. Thank you again for joining me in this episode of Writer Unblocked. I'll see you next time.